Welcome to Unbound. You're here for conscious chats that go deeper than your Instagram feed, where we ditch the dogma but keep it real. So let's get unbound. Welcome back to Unbound.
We're back. We are back. Okay, Georgia. Today, let's get unbound on manifestation and abundance.
Ooh, okay. Juicy.
There's a lot of talk about manifestation. A lot of people participating in practices of manifesting. Is it worthwhile?
Well, let's dial this right back, because I think where we are at this point in time is there is this growing consciousness around the fact that we're co-creating with our own self ultimately, whether that is the understanding that someone has at the time, but this is where this burgeoning knowledge around manifestation is coming from. I think there is a huge part of it missing, which is the understanding of what part of us is manifesting. So it's not the individuality that manifests. So we can get a little bit stuck in, I think, the excitement of really just getting everything that we want, the vision board, and I'm just going to get all the things and then I'm going to be happy. And so the problem with that is that it's not going to lead to lasting happiness, getting the things that you want. So it can be being done from a place of need for a starting point. I need to get those things, this is going to be the source of my happiness. Again, a mistaken understanding of where true happiness really resides. And that's going to lead to disappointment ultimately. So firstly, where it's being done from and why might be just going slightly off track from the deeper truth of things. Secondly, the understanding of how the mechanics of that is actually taking place, because the part of us that's manifesting is the universal part, the more expanded creative intelligence that has and is all form and phenomena, is all of the infinite resources and infinite universal mechanics that exist. It's happening through the individuality. The individuality is involved in the process, but it's not the source. It's something that happens through rather than by. And so when, people are saying or getting stuck in the idea of, I'm manifesting so hard on this, that isn't manifesting. That is just simply ruminating or desiring or getting attached to, thinking a lot about. If we think that thinking a lot about something is going to make it come into being, then why don't we have everything that we already want? And also, what are you creating potentially that you don't want to be experiencing? Because there's a lot of thinking going on around that which we don't want to happen. So the third piece is taking real responsibility. If we have an idea and understanding that we are co-creating in that manifestation process, at least to a degree, then we have to take responsibility for what we're putting our attention on. So this piece of understanding that where the universe is creating from, firstly, is a still center. It's from stillness. So if we're charging around, stuck in the doing, push, we're not manifesting, we're just busy. And yes, obviously we're going to get some results through effort, but the things that are happening really in all senses is that which is already lining up for us anyway. So if we find that we put some attention on something and then that thing comes to pass, it's not really that individuality in and of itself, by itself, created that. It's that there's a certain alignment with universal intent, universal desire rising up through individuality, which then you came into alignment with, and then it came onto your timeline. It was already there, it was already coming towards you, and you created space to allow it. And some of that allowing is through action that's going to be required of you. But to think that it's just the individuality that made it all happen is a misunderstanding of the mechanics of everything that exists, because then why aren't we getting everything that we want? absolutely everything, So I just want to take it a bit deeper than maybe what the current understanding is, because we can really get caught up in entry level understanding or, get very attached to certain things and certain practices without really grounding it in the deeper wisdom, the deeper understanding.
Is it still okay to want, though? Like to like want and desire and see a picture of, we talked about yesterday, like in some years I want to move closer to the beach and I want the sunrise coming in my bedroom window.
Yes,
and, like, is it still okay to hold those visions? Like, what if I happen to have a vision board and that lined up with it?
Yeah, beautiful. The desire is not an issue. Desire will always be there. We're desiring things all day long. Ultimately, now I want a coffee, now I want to rest, now I want this, now I want that. Where the problem comes in, so we don't want to make our desires wrong. It's firstly that all of those desires aren't going to be in alignment. Not all of them. Some of them maybe. But when we get attached, and this is where the piece that causes suffering, because we can obviously do anything that we want, but the point of this wisdom is to minimize suffering. And by aligning with the truer wisdom and having a deeper understanding of the mechanics, then we're not causing ourselves unnecessary suffering, because this attachment to the desire coming to fruition being my only way of getting happy, and then it starts to drive behaviors that actually move us out of alignment and create suffering, which is, striving so hard that we cause ourselves to burn out in a way that's unsustainable. Other areas of our life come out of balance as a result because we're not paying attention to the body, what its needs are. We're ignoring maybe some relationships in favor of, I need to get the thing. But we have to just take a step back and think, need versus desire, that then I'm also okay should that not come to pass. I'm enjoying this moment now. I'm experiencing fulfillment here. I'm enjoying the process, and also I'm moving in the direction of honoring that desire. I really am claiming that. So you have a desire to live by the ocean and have the sun coming in through your window. It's good to put some attention on that. But if that pathway is causing you to move out of alignment in other areas, firstly, you're moving yourself further away from it. Because if it is aligned for you on the timeline, then there's going to be certain actions that move you in that direction in an aligned way. Nature is signaling that to you, but you're missing those signals in favor of now we're into need, now we're into, exclusive action, missing the other pieces that may be actually the things that build the deserving power within your experience to bring that to fruition. So we are unconsciously moving further away in some cases from the desire coming into fruition. And we've also made the mistake that, so say this, I know this isn't the case for you because you're regularly meditating and enjoying life as it plays out. The attachment isn't there. That's the key piece. It's not about the desire, it's about the attachment. But why do we get attached is because we think that that's going to be the pinnacle point in life, and then my life's going to get really good. And then we're now missing how many years will that come to be. It's not something that's coming tomorrow.
Potential happiness.
Yeah. Before that whole vision aligns, it could be a 15, 20-year trajectory in terms of the aligned timing. Because if you could just make it happen, ping, universe is my sugar daddy, you'll just appear out of thin air tomorrow, that's just ridiculous. So if it's a long range view, then we don't want to be exporting our happiness to a future event that's 15 or 20 years away. So there's that piece as well. That's ultimately actually now the desire is causing suffering, because you're not here in this moment, and here in this moment is where all the signals, the seeds are of how to move in the direction of bringing that into fruition, because deep state of presence allows you to truly recognize in the moment this little seed or this faint charm to move in this direction, and then you meet someone that causes this collaboration that ends up being a huge piece of how that whole vision comes into play. So desire, fantastic. We need to recognize that not all desires are going to be relevant. Your fifth coffee for the day, is that coming from for example, is that coming from pure charm, pure spontaneous intuition bubbling up? Probably not. It's coming from attachment. We know when something's coming from attachment, it's because there's need. I have to get it. I have to get it. Now, let's talk about desire for a relationship, for example, which is a big one. There's a lot of really hot-looking men and women on people's vision boards. They're hoping for a relationship. The desire can at the same time be aligned. So it's coming for you at a certain point in time. It is, a natural desire. It's something that is aligned for you. The timing of that we can't control, as anyone who knows that's on a dating app. You cannot control the timing of that. But you can, at the same time as it being a aligned desire, get attached to it. And then it can become like a haunting, a desperation, and we're starting to get exclusively thinking about that, which would look like, everyone's in relationships and I'm not, and why this and why that. A lot of thinking comes in about why it's not coming. Comparison comes in, which is robbing you of enjoying happiness right now. So yes, we can be manifesting hard, thinking about it, putting it on the vision board, but now our manifestation, quote unquote, because it's not really manifestation, it's just thinking about something and wanting it a lot. Now that's causing suffering. So that's the piece that I want to provide some guidance around refining so that it's not causing suffering. There's no need to make anyone wrong in this. It's just let's understand the mechanics so that we're not unconsciously causing suffering and actually moving ourselves away from the manifestation of the desire. When the desire manifests, when that thing that you're cognizing, feeling charm for, feeling a desire for comes into fruition, it's not going to bring fulfillment. The fulfillment actually is already there if you're starting to tune to that. What it does is the desire gets fulfilled. You have a certain sense of fulfillment that comes on a temporary basis for that being realized. But then, as you know, the mind then moves on to wanting the next thing and the next thing. So regardless of how wonderful that potentiality is, it's not going to cause lasting happiness. I have talked to so many people, mentored people in lovely homes, lovely relationships, the things have arrived, and happiness, total fulfillment is not there, because then the stress about, now, we have to fix the roof, or it's, experiencing subsidence, or now we're really mortgaged to the hilt, and we're stressed about that, or we're in the middle of the renovation's so stressful. The things that you desire can also be causes of stress. So we have to really go back to, what are we really looking for? Is it that thing on your vision board? Is that what you're really looking for? No, you're looking for happiness, because happiness is what you feel that thing will bring. It will bring a certain set of experiences that cannot be had without that, though there are many other experiences that can be equally valuable. It's when we start to get exclusive thinking around that, getting into need, getting into attachment, and then missing the experience that we're having right now and everything along the way. And then it becomes a cherry on top, which, yes, it brings a sense of sometimes achievement, temporary happiness is there, but we're not reliant on that. So it's about that sort of crunching down to exclusive value, missing everything that's here now, rather than allowing that desire to be there, acknowledging it. We don't need to pretend we're not having the desire. Acknowledging the desire is good. That gives energy to it. That's great. Exclusively focusing on it. Manifestation's not an exclusive, focused process. We think about what is that universal part of ourselves. It's the most expansive. It's not exclusive. It's all-inclusive. It's open. It's free. It's free of need. And therefore, spontaneous desire, spontaneous aligned desire can arise up within the nervous system of its unique and individual parts. But it's not coming from narrow band exclusive experience, which is based in need or attachment.
I think it's a really good example, the relationship example, because that's going to be familiar to so many people, particularly when you think like you may desire a relationship, but you want to be, happy and content and aligned in the present, because that's going to support ultimately manifestation of whatever's aligned for you in the future, maybe including a relationship. But, loneliness is a real thing.
Yes.
And so there is, even if you're doing all the things that you can do to be as happy and content in the present moment, you might still be experiencing some suffering because you might be feeling lonely, for example.
Yeah.
So does that mean that by experiencing some suffering because of that, you're potentially pushing away something that you want? But it's also very hard to avoid on some occasions.
It's such a good point. And I don't think we need to deny that the loneliness is there. We do function better in community, in communion. But when we have waves of that, and the reality is that there's going to be an experience of loneliness outside of relationship and sometimes inside of relationship. So there are times where our partner can't be there for us in the way that we want because they're tired, stressed, they're working away. These are the realities. So when we get into this idea, this thinking that the relationship is going to make me happy, that's also setting ourselves up for disappointment. Anyone in a relationship knows that the relationship can actually cause a lot of suffering at times. It can cause you more suffering than almost anything else because of love and attachment and connection being on the line there. So yes, we can have loneliness outside, and that's perfectly natural and normal. Getting stuck in that for too long is something that we can take control over. We can acknowledge it. We can acknowledge the desire is there and just let it be okay to be desiring a relationship. Neither hyper attaching, but neither denying. Finding a space where we can hold that desire and also open up our experience to everything that already is. Because, and as you know, I've spent a lot of time alone. I've had a real masterclass in letting go of attachment to relating, and having relationships that caused suffering actually broke my attachment to relationship. It was such a beautiful gift because it meant that I stopped really needing it and stopped looking for it, because I realized you can be in relationship and experience so much suffering there. We tend to glorify things, and relationships is probably the thing we glorify most. Again, look at the programming, Disney movies, happily ever after, she meets her prince, it's all heteronormative, and it is this idea that, and then we're happily ever after. Now, we watch those movies, at least my generation did. Hopefully the storylines are getting a little bit more complex, a little bit more reflective of actual life, but we're watching that at a very impressionable age. If you look around, most people that probably aren't actually even in relationships in which they're really truly satisfied and experiencing joy and fulfillment through the relationship. That's quite rare. So the pathway to that is not hyper focusing on it and thinking it's going to solve all our problems and take away all of our loneliness, because however you are with yourself is how you're going to be in relationship. So if you're not taking care of your own needs, if you haven't developed a certain level of self-sufficiency, if you're not able to hold the complexity of your emotional responses in a moment, yes, there's some loneliness there, but also that's okay. I'm going to self-nurture a bit. Self-nurturance is really important. In order to have a healthy relationship, we're going to need to be able to nurture self. So if you haven't listened to our relationship episode, some of this was covered. I recommend jumping back into that to go deeper on that side of things. But it's okay to feel lonely from time to time. Recognize that this is a natural part of life, actually. But it's also an opportunity to go deeper with your connection with self. And we do that by moving away from the exclusive focus on the relationship's going to bring me happiness to opening up to, well, if creative intelligence has not provided a relationship right now, it's not relevant for me to be in one. It's not relevant for us to be in relationship all the time. Again, that comes from a cultural and societal obsession with relationship based on what? It's not actually, in a lot of cases, it's not making people happy. So there is a balance there. We need connection, but that's not the only way we can get connection. There is a whole just beautiful connection with self, with nature, with the divine aspect of consciousness when you start to really open up to that. And that comes from moving away from hyper-focus on another human being the source of it, to recognize actually you're the source of it. There's opportunity to connect deeper everywhere. And then when we also connect through a human physiology, another human connection, then that becomes a greater expression of the connection we're already feeling, and it's going to have a lot more freedom and a lot more chance to actually be what we're looking for, which is a vehicle for expression, for connection, for joy, for fulfillment, but not the source of it. You are the source of it. You, in relationship with another, any kind of fulfillment that you experience, love that you experience, is actually coming through your nervous system. You're generating it. It comes from the rising up of self on the inside. The other person is a trigger for that. But we can find triggers in other areas. We can find opportunities to connect in other areas. And my experience for myself on the long pathway of this, which gives me the opportunity to be able to share it like this, has been that when I let go, when I had to really challenge the assumption in my own awareness that that was going to be the source of my happiness, that could be the only source of my happiness, that I was somehow missing out now. It was all just an idea. When I let go of that, there just was so much more of a flood of enjoying my own company, valuing it without it needing to be with reference to another, which is so important for women to do, because even more so than men, we've been programmed to be finding our happiness and worth in reference to another, in reference to children that we have, in reference to a partner that we have. And I don't have either of those things, and I'm living a very happy, fulfilled life. And it also doesn't mean I don't have the desire. The desire is there, but my degree of attachment has dramatically reduced. It's not really there at all now. And I'm able to experience so much richness in my connection with self, with nature, with divine. And so that is where we can move to. Of course, that's a process, and it takes time, it takes practice, it takes techniques, it takes knowledge, and it takes the willingness to really go there with yourself and to challenge those assumptions and work within your own consciousness to let go. Might there be passing waves of loneliness? Yes, but then it's also, again, the opportunity to go deeper and to find an outlet for it elsewhere through friendship. Friendship is such an undervalued source of connection and love. And we've hyper attached onto romantic love as being the only kind. And I think, again, we're starting to recognize the value of friendship, and those are relationships that are there for, in many cases, a lifetime. In many cases, they're richer than the romantic relationship.
And cause less suffering.
They cause almost no suffering in many cases, just a source of pure joy, being fully seen, accepted. And so it just doesn't have to come, again, exclusivity, narrow focus, which means really attachment, is the source of suffering, not the desire itself. I hope that kind of brings a bit of clarity.
Yeah, it does. I think there's something I want to ask around, like, I'm just thinking of vision boards, and often, and what you're saying about letting go brought this to mind, around, like, sometimes the things that you want to manifest are these kind of ideas about peak experiences in life, whether it be Prince Charming or Princess Charming, or whether it be
House Charming,
new kitchen charming. Definitely there's one for me. Whether it be a baby, for example, and sometimes that's something that there are going to be things that sometimes people do have to get to the point where they genuinely need to let go of those peak experiences of, the idea that that's going to come. And when, you talked a bit about letting go and that there's tools and techniques and it's time. But I don't know, could you maybe say a little bit more about where to start with letting go?
I think the more that we're able to experience the full abundance and richness of this moment, the more that helps us with being able to let go of attachment to what appears to be peak experiences or strong desires that we may have that actually don't come to pass. For me, I'm at the point where now I won't be having children, and there was a pathway to letting go of that. And that's a big one. That can cause suffering and grief for some women for, many, many years. And so that is one that is an obvious example of something that we just have to let go of. It's not in my timeline. Now, I could get really despondent about that. I could get depressed about it. It's not to say there haven't been waves of grief that I've moved through, and certain things will pull that out. But because I have such a embedded practice, meditation is, obviously I highly recommend that as an absolute essential for anyone, because if we're not connecting inside, that vertical relationship, the horizontal relationship, which means anything that we're wanting to, desiring, getting attached to outside of ourselves, can cause suffering because there's not enough awakening to the inner fulfillment on the inside. It doesn't mean there won't be grief around something, and sadness as we let go of a potentiality that at a point in time we were desiring. So enlivening of that inner layer of fulfillment gives stability, the stability to experience that desire, move through the grief and let it go. And particularly with Vedic meditation, which is the foundational practice that I've had for at least 9 years and have been teaching for almost as long, it is a letting go technique. So a lot of meditation practices are focus-based, focusing on your breath, on your thoughts, on the voice of a guided meditation, for example. Whereas Vedic meditation's in its entirely own category, whereas it's a letting go practice. You have a particular type of mantra, which is a sound, a vibration, a mind vehicle. That's what mantra means, that has the capacity to draw the mind inward. But interestingly, you're not focusing on that. Your teacher will tell you, think the mantra in a particular way that you learn on the course, and then you have to let it go. And I remember when I learned this practice, I was like, yeah, I've let go of this, I've let go of that, I've moved out of all of these things. And then I recognized what really letting go felt like. And I was really just mentally telling myself I'd let go. There was no physiologically letting go. Whereas the mechanism of this practice makes you learn what it feels like to let go, not thinking about letting go. Thinking about, talking about is not actually letting go. But when you're given this sound and all you want to do is hang on to it, and then you have to let it go, and it itself teaches you that because it slips away and you can't hold on to it, you're learning and practicing what the mechanism is of letting go in your awareness. And almost all meditators report they're able to let go of things more quite quickly after learning. I'm sweating the small stuff more. What does that mean? My attachment to it is diminishing. How is that diminishing? Well, I'm learning how to just let go. So my awareness, even outside of the practice, is spontaneously able to let go more. And at the same time, that baseline layer of fulfillment is building up inside, which comes on as a feeling of, I just feel generally quite a lot more buoyant, quite a lot better about things than I did before. And when I learned, I was, recovering from, go back to episode 1 if you want the full story. I won't dive into it all over again, but I was recovering from my third surgery at the time. I was single, 32, thought all of these things were bad at the time, and I was not in the greatest place physically, mentally, emotionally. And then I learned to meditate. And of course, this is why I teach it now. It's like within a week, I just feel so much better. Nothing has changed externally. I haven't got any of the things that I want right now. Yes, some things are great and many, many things are pretty challenging. I've been through a divorce. I'm single. My friends are having children. I currently have no pathway to do that. I'm also have been through cancer, chemo, and my body is in a physically wrecked state. I'm extremely tired, and yet I feel kind of good on the inside about it all. Nothing's changed externally. This is so important. This is why I emphasize having a practice, and doesn't solve all of your problems by any means. You still have to do the work. You have to, recognize what needs work in your experience outside. You might need therapy. You might need other things. You still need to work out. There's plenty of other aspects of life that are still required, but foundational practice where you're connecting inside and awakening to the true source of inner fulfillment is so important in that piece, because you can't let go if you're stressed. The more stressed you are, the more you're going to attach to things, and you're more and more stressed, so you feel like this golden ticket of the child, the partner, the house, the renovation, the more money, the government change, whatever it might be, is then going to bring happiness. Will it bring more frictionlessness in certain areas? Yes, it may do. It may also not. We don't know that. We don't know what the experience is actually going to be. Best chance, though, is that if you have more access to that inner fulfillment, then you're not solely reliant on that coming from that person, vehicle, experience. And that's when we set ourselves up for suffering, because it can create disappointment if that person thing doesn't bring that feeling all the time, which nothing and no one ever will. It can only be found consistently inside. And also if that should not come to pass, which many things don't in life. The things that we dreamed of as a child, our life has probably turned dramatically different from that experience. And so what will give us stability and actual fulfillment on the inside, we start to recognize what that actually is. It doesn't mean we don't still desire. It doesn't mean that we're not still moving and taking actions in the direction of bringing forth some of these desires into manifestation. But it's not on a hyper-attached basis, because that is where the suffering really comes from. So for me, it's kind of been a blend of having that access to inner fulfillment, having access to wisdom to really force me to embody the wisdom in that moment. And that's what knowledge is for. It's for action. It's not just nice ideas that you then leave in the cupboard and just drop into however stress wants to manifest in your nervous system. So, okay, this is an invitation for me to really go deep within myself, within my own experience, to value myself and my life as it is in absence of these things, which has proved to be so powerful, and to really learn an even greater path to happiness, I think, for me, is that I can be happy and enjoying life in the absence of some things that I really wanted or desire. And not getting them's taught me more than getting them would have.
Yeah. You touched on it briefly just then, but one thought that did come up was, if you become so fulfilled and content and happy in this moment and what you've got, like, does that mean that you're just going to stop desiring and wanting things? Like, could that reduce your drive and motivation to achieve some of the things that might have been on your vision board, you know?
Yeah, and that is, I hear that concern a lot for people before they learn to meditate. Won't I just become so fulfilled, man, that I'll just sit around and maybe I'll float off to the Himalayas and I won't really do anything ever again that actually activates something in life. And that's not really the experience that we find. The thing is that more of the desires will be in alignment because you're in alignment. So your desires are now coming through purely, which means that you're not desiring things that aren't relevant on the timeline. There might still be some deep programming, which I definitely had around children, and I had to also explore that in order to help myself move through it and recognize why that desire was actually there, when my life really at this point, and however it unfolds in the future, is probably actually more what I really wanted to be doing, how I wanted to spend my time. And when I'm aligning with that soul level desire, then that piece actually falls away. But there's so much societal pressure, programming, what you thought you should be doing, what it seems like would bring certain experiences that you feel like you ought to have, FOMO, all of those things really come into the piece. But it's not that we're not desiring, it's more that the attachment's going down, the desire is more aligned because awareness is aligned on the inside, and there's less stress and need driving the desires. So the noise of those desires is going down. They may still be there, but they're getting less energy and attention in the system. And the aligned desires have more space to come through very clearly, very purely, and you simply are moving in that direction. And they seem to unfold relatively effortlessly, where that feeling of being in flow starts to happen. This is what it really means, because now universal intelligence, that baseline layer of your own awareness, is free now to manifest and use its nervous system, which is your physiology, to bring its manifestation to pass. It's nature's desire bubbling up through you. So the desires are there. You actually become more active. You're a more effective vehicle in the relative field of experience, because there's less wasting time being stressed, lost in thought, resisting the desire because you think you're not good enough, and should you even really be doing it, and can you do it, and all these other people are doing it so well, so I'm not going to do it. I'm so tired and exhausted, I don't have the energy to do it. All of that piece has reduced dramatically, so you've got more energy to actually perform the aligned actions to bring it into manifestation. So desire is still there. Attachment to desire has gone down significantly. And again, sometimes when you tune in with yourself, you will find attachment there that you'll need to let go of. We know we're attached when it's getting grippy. I need to get it. My precious. I've got to get it. Or we're starting to create attachment by mentally attaching to what the fulfillment of that desire is going to mean. So we might have a spontaneous desire that bubbles up, and then we start to go into, and when I get that, then this and this and this will happen. So we've got to be really conscious about that, because that can start to lay attachment over what is a pure desire and start to give it meaning, which the intellect likes to do. That isn't actually what it's about, and it may not play out that way. Timings and outcomes are not something we can control. We can take aligned and inspired action, but the timings and outcomes of that action is not ours to own. Overly owning it will also cause attachment and will cause suffering, because then when it doesn't happen tomorrow or next week or in the timeline, that the mind just wants everything now, instant gratification. And so then we can not have the staying power to follow through with the aligned action that might be required, because it didn't come straight away. So therefore it's wrong. I'm not doing it right. I'm going to give it up right now. All of those pieces are there as well.
So we know when we're manifesting hard because it feels easy.
We can't manifest hard. It's that implies focus, exclusivity, strain, manifesting hard. It's a state of allowing yourself to be moved where it's in alignment for you to move, allowing yourself to be inspired by creative intelligence, allowing the action to come through you without resistance. There's a lot of resistance to the actual action. You want this thing, but you're not willing to do the things that are going to take you towards getting it, towards it coming into manifestation. That piece is a huge roadblock for people. I'm desiring this kind of business or career experience or freedom in my lifestyle, but I'm not willing to spend the money that it's going to take to train in that, or to spend the time that it's going to take to get mastery in a particular subject, or take the next step of which could be anything, because I'm stuck in so much self-doubt and imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the overlay of individuality onto universal intent. How can you be an imposter in the universe, which is your own self? You can't be an imposter. It's just an idea that the small self, the ego, the individuality decides that I'm not worthy of this desire or this vision, and I'm not good enough to carry out the action. Yes, you are. That idea is simply holding you back from taking the action. You may actually be underneath it all afraid of the effort, afraid of being seen, afraid of disappointing others. Those fears are operating as little circuit breakers in you being in flow, which again is why having a practice is so essential to support that process, because it dims the noise of the fear. It dims the noise of individuality by bringing on more access to your universal self, to that state of still center from which universe is creating, and that state of flow where the actions are more aligned. That gains more energy and attention and is taking up more real estate in your consciousness than the very noisy intellect and the ego that has all these ideas about is making meaning of the desire and action and getting attached to outcomes and timing.
So is it true that like everything that we want is on the other side of fear? That's another thing that we hear a lot.
If you're loving this knowledge and would like to tap in deeper, you'll love my on-demand advanced knowledge series, Self-Mastery. It's a combination of embodied techniques and knowledge to support you in unlocking deeper abundance, energetic intelligence, staying power, understanding how to clear your energetic system, and more. Take them in your own time, enjoy powerful breath, kriya, and mantra experiences, and take home bite-sized practices and the wisdom to unlock your next level of potential. Find out more at my website, gvmeditation.com, under Self-Mastery. In the sense that if you let go of something, so we're so afraid to let go of something. If I let go of even the attachment to an idea, then maybe it won't happen. The mind is conditioned to, I need to think on and on and on about something and make it happen, because the experience of not having that is scary. I have fear around that. And I remember being a child and thinking, the last thing I want is to end up like, this person or that person who doesn't have children or a family, a single older woman, which says a lot about society's programming. But ironically, I've ended up in that position, and yet it's far better than I could have imagined. And when we let go, the attachment itself is causing suffering, it's causing contraction, it's causing stress in the system. That grippy feeling is not natural. That's a stress response to the fear of not having or being without something. Addiction is a very strong form of that. I'm hyper attached to the point where I'm addicted, and potentially the substance or item has created a physiological addiction, which becomes even stronger. And that, we know it's not a free, open, blissful experience. It's hyper stressed. So when we let go of something, the fear, we let go of the fear, we let go of the attachment, what we open up to is bliss. The interesting thing is when we let go, all there is greater bliss. It's an opportunity, and moment by moment, could be the smallest thing that you feel like you need to have or you need to get in a moment. When you let go of that and come back onto that self baseline on the inside, there's so much freedom and bliss there that we find ourselves not needing really anything, not needing anything, but maybe still experiencing desire without attachment. So we could say everything that you really want is on the other side of fear. Because what you think you want is not what you really want. Like we said, what you think you want from the vision board, it's not really the thing. It's the thing that it's what's behind that. It's what that experience or possession represents, is the feeling. But where is that feeling? It's available to you right now, which means when we start to recognize that, we can let go of the fear. There's nothing to be afraid of, because that experience in the higher state, which again takes some time, it takes cultivation, it takes understanding that that's even there and available, which is the purpose of this podcast, and that timeless knowledge which is flowing through this is that experience is available now. Let's just find that now in this moment, and then let that flow through all these experiences, which makes them richer, which means we're more present with the experience. We're not attached to it. We can allow it to unfold the way that it needs to, and not cut off from the way that nature's intent is wanting to move things in the direction of evolution. So everything we really want is on the other side of fear. When we let go of fear, when we let go of attachment, when we let go of a desire that maybe is out of alignment, that just isn't showing up in our timeline in this body, and for all reasons, because you have done the research on that in other lifetimes potentially. You've had that experience again and again and again. Your soul's looking for something different. It's looking to go deeper than the experience of what what you would receive from getting that or having that experience. Maybe let's open up to just, could there be something better? On the other side of that fear is an ocean of love, deeper love that's not dependent on something.
Yeah, and when I think about using, a house near the beach, for example, as an example, I think one of the things that is behind that desire is a sense of ease, because if I can get myself a house near the beach, then there's financial abundance there, but behind the idea of that is a sense of ease, reduced stress around finances, that if that's possible, if that amount of abundance is possible, then, that's going to bring greater relaxation in that area, I guess.
Yeah, and there is a certain amount of ease that greater financial resources will bring. But we can also challenge the idea that we need to be straining on the way there and getting stressed about money. That is ultimately also a choice. Most of the stress that we have around finances is not proportionate to the actual reality. Yes, there are things shifting, there's recessions, etc., but we have the fear, the actual fear that we're experiencing is that I will be destitute on the streets and I won't be able to pay this and I won't be able to pay that. Or I might have to let go of a few things for a period of time. That could be a reality. But will you be okay in the end? Yes. If you can stay creative and adaptive and be willing to let go of something in the moment, where perhaps there's a period of time for which that is on your timeline for all reasons. Again, if we can open up to what am I gaining from this experience, which is a hard thing to do in that moment, I will grant you. But as I've shared, there's been a lot of hard, crunchy moments in my life too. But they've all been so expansive. So a period where the tide is out financially. I like to talk about it in the terms of tidal movements, because money is a flow. It's a flow of energy, ultimately. We've created currency out of it, but ultimately it's a flow of exchange. I'm exchanging one thing in exchange for another. Gratitude may have been the original form of exchange, and then we made it currency. But it's ultimately a flow, and our finances will be in flux because everything that's in the relative is going to be in the field of change. So we can get into hyper attachment around money where we're hoarding and holding onto it. And that can be, abundance is not correlated to amount of money, because we can have a lot of money, and we see this, and then be very miserly around we're just not spending on anything and calculating every little expenditure. And is that a free, expansive state? Is it really bringing more abundance? It's not actually. It's bringing more stress. It's bringing more contraction. Hyper-focusing on the money also isn't making you happy. And this idea that money brings happiness has already been proven not to be the case by those that have achieved all kinds of amounts of wealth in the world, and they're still not fulfilled. So let's just pull right back from that idea. And I know that's not what you're saying, but I'm having that piece come out now as well, because we make this mistake that having all the money in the world, well, wouldn't that be? But that doesn't guarantee your ability to enjoy it or to really be present and connected in the moment. When you can be present and connected in the moment, you find that actually don't need a lot of money to be able to do that. So there is a tipping point where it creates a level of ease in anyone who's experienced poverty and it's been unable to meet their bills. Then yes, there's going to be a point where earning a certain amount is going to bring a level of ease. And then, we want all of our creative, adaptive, energetic faculties online to be able to be available to creative solutions of how we can move out of that, how we can move out of the state of consciousness that we will have adopted by being in that experience, that's been mirrored to us by others around us, our parents, others maybe that are experiencing that if it's been more, on a community level, or it's been broader outside of our own experience. We will start to be expecting that experience, and we need a certain level of creativity and adaptability to move out of it, to be creative about how, and to take action that's going to move us out of that experience. And so maybe that is the higher purpose in that moment, is to find that there are so many rags to riches stories, and it was in fact the pressure that was put on that created the drive. There's lots of people who grew up in more abundant environments that then aren't able to activate any kind of motivation or staying power because everything's been provided. And I've also, met some of their parents who are trying to find ways for them to support the younger generation who've grown up with a level of financial abundance and ease, but it hasn't really served them in a lot of other ways. So we have to recognize there's a balance there. And can we find that ease now? Let's challenge the idea that that level of ease is only available with that level of financial abundance. Also, sometimes the way nature lines things up is that you are requiring, again, moving it away from need to requirement, which are two different things. You're requiring a certain amount of financial flow in your life to meet the obligations that you have, which, expenses, life expenses, rent, mortgage, food, whatever it might be. And therefore, you need to perform a certain amount of action in order to generate that. No action, no income is coming in. That action, when it's inspired, you're on dharma, you're on purpose, you're in aligned action, it's drawing resources towards you. Now, if you had a lot of money, you wouldn't be doing as much action potentially. And so sometimes the relevance is it keeps you serving. It keeps you offering your skills and abilities into the world with a certain level of drive that you wouldn't do otherwise. And so it can have a relevance in that sense as well, which is it's pushing you to perform a certain amount of service, a certain amount of dharma, a certain amount of action that is creating an evolutionary effect that you wouldn't otherwise be doing. So there can be relevance to that as well, even though we may be desiring a greater level of abundance and not needing to do as much. That's the idea, I'll be doing less. But if your action is performing an evolutionary function, maybe you can't afford childcare, well, that's going to be certainly challenging and taxing for you, but maybe the relevance is that you are there with your kids more of the time than you would be if you had more. And there's no judgment here, good, bad, or otherwise. It may be that you're also performing actions that are really in alignment that get supported by you having childcare. There's just so many different ways that it can show up. But wherever we're at on that spectrum is where we are meant to be at. Sometimes it might feel easier in certain pathways, and sometimes it might provide more challenge. But the challenge in and of itself can also be delivering greater benefit to us. And then we also have to step back and look at the piece of, well, am I really showing up for all the actions, the ideas, the inspiration that I have? Lots of people have a lot of ideas, but they're not actioning them because of all the fear. It's not always money, but some of that might be the piece where I'm not willing to invest in that because, and then they're staying in the waiting room, sitting back and not investing a certain amount to generate the greater flow that might come from that. So we have to really be conscious around our experience of what is the higher value of this. If I could really step back and see from soul level, from that highest possible perspective, what might I be gaining from this challenge that I'm having at this time that I might not gain from more ease. Ease and comfort doesn't necessarily grow us, doesn't expand us in the same way that challenge does, though we resist that more. We all just want to be comfortable. I just don't think I'm meant to be living in a comfortable life. Is from White Lotus as an example of that whole mentality that's actually very baked in. Because we resist challenge, and so we're not really looking for what challenge might actually be offering us that's greater than what we wouldn't have without the challenge. But we also have to take into account that piece where we may be resisting action, inspired action, moving towards vision, ideas, spontaneous inspiration that we might have. That might actually be the pathway to creating more ease or more financial abundance.
One sort of idea that's settled in my consciousness as I've been meditating over these past years is the idea is that all you need is enough. And everyone's enough is a little bit different. But at any point, all you need is enough. I don't know, maybe you could speak to that a little bit, because I can't really explain it, but it's just something that I've been like, all you need is enough.
Yeah, generally our idea of what we think we need is very inflated from what's really actually required. Now, all you need is enough. I would challenge that a little bit to be opening to a little bit more abundance, because when we're thinking I just need enough, then
I'm still going to need enough to buy the house by the beach, right?
Exactly.
That's a different level of enough.
Exactly. Just enough has this sort of idea that it's got a little bit of a flavour of contraction to it, because I'm just going to have enough all the time. We can be opening our awareness a little bit more to, it's coming easily, it's flowing easily, there's an abundance. So there's just a bit more ease around it. But also there is a thread of truth there, which is that we don't need excess. Billionaires, for example, from my perspective, that is not, there's no one individual that can reasonably spend that money in sustainable and valuable ways over a lifetime. So that if you have generated that, then you're there to serve the wider collective. You've generated an amount of money that has the potential to solve many of the world's problems if all billionaires were able to get together and have that consciousness and that awareness. So we don't really need to be generating so much money that we don't know what to do with it. That then also creates problems. So it can create its own level of stress. Too much money. People are worried about how to spend it and how is invested properly and all of this. So yes, the actual amount that we need, that's required to, live a joyful life is not as much as we usually think.
Because there's also that mentality out there of enough is never enough.
Yes.
And there's this sort of feverish need to accumulate and have more and more and more. But that feels like there's fear underneath that mentality. Yeah,
there's attachment, because when we're attaching to one exclusive channel, be it the relationship, be it the money, be it the fame, be it the recognition, be it the validation, whatever it might be, as being the source of happiness, it will never be enough. You will never get enough validation from your partner to satisfy you. If that is where you're seeking it and that's your only channel, there will never be enough, because there is an empty hole inside of you that hasn't been filled yet, that hasn't been started to be enlivened with inner fulfillment, filling up on the inside. That's what inner fulfillment really means. So without that, we're just an empty well of need. And that can never be satisfied externally. So if we chase the money, then we'll always be chasing the money. Doesn't matter what that amount is. It just grows and grows and grows. You move to the next level, now you want your private jet, because the other people that you see yourself as equals with on a financial footing, they have private jets now. You just want more and more and more. And it becomes just a bag of need. There's no fulfillment there. There's no actual enjoyment, being in a state of joy, in a state of appreciation, all of the time, if that much need is there or is driving the experience. When we're coming from a place of there's a growing level of inner fulfillment, there is a healing that's taken place on the inside of all the needy parts that are driving that experience, then it doesn't mean that we're not going to be active and leading a purposeful life. When we're moving from purpose, and again, drop back to our episode on purpose and Dharma, when we're moving in Dharma being our aligned action, our individual role in the evolution of things, when we're moving from that place and resources are naturally attracted to that and resources are coming in, there isn't going to be that experience of there being never enough. Instead, there's an experience of appreciation, joy, and fulfillment along the way. And that vehicle is providing an outlet for expression of that. It's not the need is not driving it. It's actually being driven from fulfillment, which is when we're really in alignment, because nature is universal intelligence, creative intelligence, is a state of fullness. From fullness comes out, is the Vedic saying. So it's being fulfilled to begin with, and it's expressing and moving through something in a state of fulfillment. And that is how we get to the embodied experience of it's not about the destination. It's about the journey, because I'm not hyper attached to the destination, because there is a level of fulfillment that's growing all the time. That's there, that allows me to enjoy it along the way, because I know that whether or not I reach the destination, I might die before I get to that destination. Then I've wasted an entire life hyper-focused on that. Top regrets of the dying. Didn't, smell the roses along the way. Didn't appreciate my family enough. Didn't spend enough time with people where I was experiencing love and connection, because why would we not do that? We're hyper focused on something, getting to the destination, getting something, getting happiness from outside, missing all of the opportunities to be happy right now.
So we can generate that abundance on the inside.
Yes.
Does that mean that our external world will reflect that, or will come into alignment so it reflects that?
Yeah, we're more likely to have an abundant experience in all different ways. Abundance is not just finances. An abundance of health, an abundance of joy, an abundance of connection, an abundance of presence, an abundance of wisdom. These are the things that we ultimately are really desiring, and we're looking in the wrong places potentially for them. So if we...
I'm still looking at my beige kitchen. I think like it's good to give those examples of abundance, because sometimes you cannot appreciate the areas of your life in which you are experiencing great abundance when you are hyper-focused on your beige kitchen.
Exactly. So that can be there. There's nothing wrong with that. Yes, you'd love to renovate the kitchen. Fantastic. Beautiful. But needing to, you're going to close down to all of the wonderful abundance that you already have. You own your own home. That in itself is incredibly abundant in these times. So that's an example where we hyper-focus on the things, which is so relatable for so many of the little pieces that we notice. We're very visual. We notice that one little thing and the roof paint doesn't match the exterior wall, whatever it might be. And if I just fix that, then we're creeping in that direction. So we let it be there. We spend time. We have to spend time cultivating the inner experience. I will say that. You can't think your way there. You can't just want to have inner fulfillment. It's not going to happen. The rishis, the sages, the seers, the yogis, they're incredibly fulfilled, and still they're practicing. They weren't like, oh, now I'll just spend my mornings, scrolling and watching Netflix and just kind of doing whatever I want. They had dedicated practice always, because even in that state, it starts to become a natural desire to want to go deeper with it and to continue to cultivate and put attention and energy into that experience. So we need to spend time cultivating it. Why we don't want to spend time cultivating it is because of all of the reasons why we need it. Stress, burnout, hyper-attachment to getting, I just don't have time because I've got to do and get to this and make sure that my to-do list is done, or else what? You're going to get to a point where your physiology will start packing it in, and it may already be doing that. If there's any anxiety there, if there's any rushing sensation, if there's rattiness, already those are signals that things are out of alignment. Too much doing, not enough cultivating of being that gives us access to balance and inspired action, and when to let go. Let go of that other thing that you think you need to do right now. Let go of the pushing, only to the degree it's out of alignment. We don't have to be in a hyper state of stress to be very effective. When we're really in that flow state and we're just paying attention, tuning in, the signal is there, we understand the timing of our life, we're letting go of attachment to timings and outcomes, we find this effortless flow where the resources, the people, the ideas, the connections that we require just spontaneously arrive. So many times I think, I should just look up that I need to learn how to do that thing, or I really would like this would be really supportive of my business, then I just forget about it. And then something happens. Person pops up, they've already done it. They're the person. I didn't waste any time feverishly looking, researching for hours. And the timing. Let's talk about this podcast. So many people have said you should do a podcast, you're great on podcast, great speaker, knowledge, blah, 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 blah. And everyone's doing podcasts, and yet I just didn't feel any time for it. I couldn't muster the energy to do something that was out of alignment, which is the timing was not aligned. If I'm willing to wait rather than straining, spending a lot of time, who knows what the results of that would have been. But certainly the time that it came, it just was a conversation with you, then it just fell literally into place. It felt basically effortless. So it doesn't need to look that way, but we yet don't have a model, a paradigm, and we haven't had that experience yet for what it looks like and feels like when we're in that really aligned space and we're not doing a lot of actions. Of course, there are always there's a degree to which I do things where I'm like, oh no, that's caused something that isn't an outcome that I really wanted. But the amount of time I'm doing that is much less. The degree of the consequence is much less than prior to bringing meditation in. So we need to create an opportunity to have that experience, and bringing the stress levels down is absolute primary importance so that we can clearly see, where am I out of alignment? Where am I straining? Where can I create more openness? Where can I let go? These are questions that we want to be asking.
So if we want manifestation to take place,
it's happening anyway.
You can't stop it.
It's already happening.
It's a team sport.
We can minimize resistance,
I
would say. Minimize resistance, and that's going to bring it forward to the degree it's relevant.
Right. So like removing the obstacles to manifesting of things which we designed in an aligned way, desire in an aligned way, and generating a sense of and a lived experience of an utter abundance. We need a practice.
It's very hard to do that without a practice. Why? Because there's so much stress. There are so many demands. Our attention is being drawn onto all these different things, scattering it away from what might be relevant. Phones, devices, the amount of pressure in modern life, the amount of fatigue, stress. We just become full of stress, and then we're acting from stress. We're not acting from inspiration or alignment most of the time. It keeps us on this rabbit wheel where we can't really see with clarity. So we need a technique. We need a practice that's releasing stress primarily, and I think we've talked about that in a few spots in these initial foundational episodes of Unbound, that if we're not releasing stress, this is why I'm talking mainly about stress release when I talk about techniques and practices, though it does expand awareness. It moves you towards enlightenment. What is that? Just a state of enjoyment in the moment, really, to a very, very deep degree, where there's a lot of light and there's not a lot of ignorance, suffering, incorrect thinking, minimized. Yes, it does all of those things. It increases creativity, memory, all of those things. But why it's able to do that is because of the stress release first. So we want a technique that's rapidly releasing stress. That's why I love Vedic meditation, because it releases stress in a powerful way because of the rest state of the body, and the body really releases stress when it's resting. That's the other piece, is that we can be doing other things. We might be doing breath work, which enlivens prana, life force, very wonderful technique. We might be journaling. We might be walking in nature, yoga, surfing, ice bathing, all of these things. They have wonderful effects, but they're not releasing stress at the baseline in the same way. So this, through the ancient wisdom traditions, even through yoga asana, yoga means the state of union between individuality and universality. The asana are the positions. So that positions, the yoga asana, the positions that are giving us more access through the physiology to have an experience of unity. even within those teachings of Patanjali, the great master of some of the Yoga Sutras, for example, he talked about the yoga asana preparing the body for meditation. There is such an emphasis on meditation as being a primary tool and not necessarily the only tool, because of course we need to enliven prana, we need to move the body, we need to have the full system online, but there's a primacy to that because, as Einstein said, problems cannot be solved at the level of consciousness that created them. He was in a very expanded state of consciousness where he was able to draw knowledge from the field. He was a channel for that, which is why he was like, I'm not going to do the experiments to prove this. You all can do all of that. I already know this. I have that inner knowingness. I'm not going to waste my time doing the experiments. He didn't actually perform a lot of the experiments that proved his theories true. The theories that he drew from the field. So it's faster, it's more intelligent to be able to download that truth in the moment. But generally we need a tool. Some people have access to that without a tool or technique, but usually for most of us, and that just happens to be what they were born to do or to bring into the world at that particular time. Like, I'm not sure what Einstein was doing. We don't know. Sometimes we were already in that very expanded state, but you'll already know if you're there because you're not really suffering. You're having really brilliant genius level ideas, knowledge and wisdom flowing through you. You're enjoying. There's no stress. If all of those things are there, then potentially you don't need a tool or technique. But let's not stop there, because wherever you are at, the experience can still deepen from there. You're still in this body, that means you're still growing, that means there's still more potential.
I think there's, I remember way back when, don't need to dive into the whole story, but a criticism that I had received once was, fun, about meditation, was that, you know, it was about you can't go through life basically with your eyes closed. It was like not engaging in reality, that it was almost like I was dissociating from the reality of whatever the situation was, and that, you know, things really take place in eyes open and, you know, properly engaging in life as not like seen to be avoiding or dissociating from life.
Yes. Now, I'm going to take that as that was someone's viewpoint on what you were doing
indeed,
rather than the actual reality. Because
absolutely.
It's just as humans, we want to avoid a lot of things. We're in the habit of avoidance, and you can use any tool, any knowledge, or any lack thereof of tool or knowledge in order to avoid if that's what you really want to do. However, that is not the teaching. The teaching from this tradition is yogasta kuru kamani, establish in being, perform action. And anyone that's spent any time with me knows that just gets drummed in, which is why the instruction is not with Vedic meditation, meditate for as long as you like, spend all day meditating, don't do anything, just meditate more, meditate as much as you can. There's a limit. It's 20 minutes, that's all you're actually instructed to do. So most people in the beginning like, well, can I do more? I just feel so good. I actually am surprised that I want to do more. And will, for a number of reasons, say that's enough and you don't need to do any more because it's very powerful. We don't want to release too much stress at once, but also we want to be engaged in life. Establish in being means take your awareness to that layer of being and then perform action. Perform action is equally as important. But if we're just performing action and we're not establishing in being, that's when our action is likely to be coming from stress. It's likely to be out of alignment. It's likely to be causing karma, binding ourselves more, rather than establish in being first. Then the action's going to naturally becoming increasingly aligned with that state of being, the baseline of all things. The more effortless path, the path that's aligned naturally without having to think about it, because your awareness has been bathed in there in that meditation time. And then we take our awareness into action, equally important part. It's now inspired action. It's now aligned action. The instruction is not establish in being and do nothing. And nor is the instruction perform action And then later when you've got time, when you're retired on a Sunday afternoon, establish in being. It's an everyday, it's a timeless piece of wisdom. If you could drill the Vedas down to one piece of knowledge, that is ultimately it. Establish in being, perform action. The relevance of that, the understanding of the interconnectedness of things, the importance of you being connected with that in alignment is all contained within that teaching. So if someone, firstly, people that are saying that, generally they're not meditating and they don't want to meditate and they're resisting actually stopping and having some time to connect and release stress. So that is generally where that comes from, because there's some resistance there that's creating a level of judgment without having had the experience. I have not heard from any meditators that I've taught that what they're doing is then less and they're just hiding away meditating all day, and that they're more active, they're more effective, they're more aware of their actions, the impacts of their actions, the areas of life in which they need to grow. And it should be highlighting to you what action is required, which means there is, like I mentioned before, still pieces where you might need to go to therapy you're now aware of this pattern that you hadn't noticed was sabotaging you before. You were faintly aware of it, now you're glaringly aware of it. And you also have the inclination to do something about it. You might need therapy for that. You might need somatic practice of some kind. You might you realize you're not exercising enough and you've got a little bit stagnant. You need to take action. Establish in being, perform action, but let's have it be inspired and aligned action. So there's nothing in that statement that says avoid reality. That's not the teaching. So either the teaching has not been given correctly or it hasn't been received correctly, but it isn't a spiritual bypass if we're using it correctly with maturity. Of course, as I said, anyone can use anything to avoid anything at any time, but that is not the real teaching of that. We can also bypass spirituality, which also has its own issues, which is if we're not connecting inside, then we're getting hyper attached outside. It's becoming all external. We're missing a huge part of what is the experience, the baseline mechanics of everything. So that also is going to cause problems equally.
Indeed. There's some problems. Yeah, no, that's a good answer. I mean, I'm feeling quite unbound now.
Are you? Good.
On manifestation and abundance.
Well,
do you have
the last thing I'd say is, say you want to, you understand the mechanics and you don't want to hyper attach. You recognize you'll need to let go and not become my precious about anything in life. So how can you best co-create and support the process of manifestation? I think we've talked about some of those mechanics, which is make sure that you have a practice that's giving you access to let go, to gain that inner clarity, to connect with and become one with the part of you that is manifesting. So important. Then the next piece I would say is minimize the taking responsibility, the piece where the individuality makes it's my desire, it's my job to get it all done. You're part of that. You can't also, this idea, I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out into the universe and the universe is going to do it all and I'll just sit back and do nothing. That is also a mistake of the intellect, because what's out there is only you. It's only your own consciousness. Yes, there are universal mechanics that will come in to support that through other people, through the connections, through the investment, through the funding mechanisms that you may attract towards you, but you are going to need to be part of that. So the other piece is, and I'm here to show up for this vision. What's required of me? These are the pieces that I can do. And then these are the pieces that are outside of my control. My individual effort cannot be applied to this. Timings and outcomes. The more effort is not going to push the outcome or the timing. It's just going to create strain and contract down what universal support might actually be available. So then we need to be able to let go of the attachment to timings and outcomes. Allow our awareness to be expansive, all-inclusive. It's why this practice of meditation is so amazing, is because it aligns with all of nature's own mechanics. It's not an exclusive practice. You're not exclusively focusing on the mantra. You're not concentrating, chanting the mantra really hard. You're not meditating hard. You're not manifesting hard. You're cultivating. That's what you get taught on the course. Those of you that have learned or will learn, you'll recognize this emphasis on an all-inclusive state of awareness. It's training your awareness. There's so many little parts of the practice that are supporting you in so many other areas to have an all-inclusive state where you can include the desire is there, but you can also include all the other aspects of your experience and allow yourself to enjoy the process, the unfolding. Let's be curious and appreciative of the unfolding. Then we can experience the joy of the pathway. The journey there holds so much value. We gain so much, almost more probably, in most cases, through what we had to go through for the destination to be arrived at than the destination itself is not actually the point where we get the most gain from. And when we can open to that, so letting go of the attachment, opening, all-inclusive state of awareness, being open and receptive to nature's intelligence. What am I being inspired to do and called towards, and how much can I activate that organizing power within myself to move in that direction and not be held back by my fears? Obviously, releasing stress is going to be an important part of that, but also recognizing what are my flavors of resistance. Is it that I don't like effort, that I'm tired? Well, if you're tired, then first we need to solve that problem so that you have more energy. If you're not physically well, that's the need of the time, is to resolve that before you can then activate something else. Doesn't mean we have to say no to the vision or the desire. We can hold that in our all-inclusive awareness, allow it to be there, but faintly. We're not gripping on. We're holding it gently, like holding a rose in our hand, but we're willing to let go of it in favor of opening to everything that's here now. And we'll give some attention to that desire. We say yes to it. We acknowledge it. That builds energy. Where attention goes, energy flows. But it needs to be an open state, not hyper-attached, closing down exclusive focus, because that's going to cause suffering and close down the sea, the ocean, the infinite resources that are actually available to you. So that is something that I'd encourage you to move towards.
That's beautiful. And I think we forget sometimes the value of the story that unfolds, because you do, with those big things that do end up happening in your life, you know, there is a whole story that goes along with it before that thing actually takes place. And there is so much value in that whole unfolding of the story as it happens.
So many riches are being gained along that storyline that then inform the way that the destination is arrived to, the quality of what you can deliver along the way, or the quality of what you deliver when you do arrive at that destination, and then recognize you're not at the end of the story. You're just at the end of that chapter and a new chapter is beginning. But what quality of consciousness can you bring to that? What quality of mastery, what depth of awareness, empathy, staying power, resilience that may be required for the next destination that has been built through the absolute brilliance of creative intelligence, the way it's led you there, will have value for the next phase. Do we get unbound?
Beautiful. I feel unbound.
Unbounded. Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, Georgia.
Yeah, thanks for your beautiful presence and questions as always.
No, it's really fun.
We'll see you all soon. Come with us on the journey into the unbounded. Thanks for getting unbound with us today. We'd so appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave us a review and to share this episode with anyone who you think could benefit. It helps us to keep these conscious conversations flowing. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. See you next week.